people.
Hello. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. What's up? How you doing? Having a
Yeah,
good
okay.
time?
Well, immediately, Stefano, you have set the tone for today's live chat. We're viewing this very much as a very casual crypto meetup. We have no plan. We're not quite sure what we're going to talk about, but we want to stress that on Fridays, show up and ask us your questions. Hang out with us. If you're a little confused about what's going on, this is the place for you. It's your happy place, isn't it, guys? Mr. Gonzo, you look like you're in a happy place. Where are you?
I sure am. I'm in Hua Hin on the beach, enjoying.
Right. Oh.
It's a bit rough.
Lord, I'm jealous. That
Beach
looks
bar.
beautiful.
Beach bar for lunch. It's a bit rough.
Well, I'm in New Zealand, and it's the middle of winter. It gets dark by about 4 o'clock at the moment. So, yeah, yours looks slightly more glorious and exotic. Stefano, where are you?
In this original new place that I've never been before. It's called My Room in Singapore. Have you ever heard of that? It's a very nice place.
Stefano's in the closet.
Yes. Having fun.
Okay. So, look, we'll if Jazzy, nice to see you here, our number one fan. If you could maybe retweet this or share the stream link. We didn't actually advertise it today. We have some new software that we're going to be using, but I managed to completely stuff that up. So we're back to Zoom. We'll be covering the reasons for using some new software shortly after we hear that Google may well be banning the advertising of crypto come August, which will quite possibly affect this channel and every single other crypto channel. Mr. Gonzo, you might have to mute yourself when you're not talking, unfortunately. So, look, we will be giving away some Axie scholarships as we always do on Fridays, and as you know, ask us good questions. That's where they go. But Stefano, for people that are maybe finding this content for the first time on a bit of a rewatch,
I'm sorry for you.
Could we start off our casual chat today? We'll start with you, and then Mr. Gonzo, you're next. Tell us how long you've been in the blockchain space. What attracted you to it in the first place, and we'll go from there.
So, yeah, I entered, when was it? 2013, 2014. So I enter on the way up to the $1,000 on Bitcoin, and I enter because people around me in my network. So I was in. I did startups in Italy, and basically, like, people started talking about, like, obviously nerds, geek, and stuff like that, and people started mentioning, like, about Bitcoin, and I started having a look about that, like, in a very naive way, like, by not having any idea or knowledge whatsoever. And that was the run, like, up to 1,000, where everybody then started talking about everybody, where, like, a lot of media start, like, covering that and be like, oh, Bitcoin reached 1,000, this is, like, incredible, blah blah, and so on. And that was when then it collapsed down from 1,000 to like 400 and so on. And then from there, obviously, by studying finance and all of that stuff, my first approach in the space was really about, like, trading, market manipulation, studying TA, candles, jumping on one thing or another. Like, it was not really like a plan, I would say, because, like, it's learning. You're trying to be, like, everywhere. You're trying to figure out things and so on. The click happens with Ethereum. It really happens to me with that, because that's when the start being a usability, a real usage for things. Before, to be honest, like, I was too young or too naive or too ignorant to even buy the unbanking sentence, or like, these global currencies, or like flipping the middle finger to like the 1% and blah blah and so on. And it never really touched me in any way, because I was too young probably for those things. And Ethereum on the other side, the smart contracts and everything, it was an issue that I had. It was a real problem that I had. One of the startups that I invested in, after 3 months, got like a super increase in valuation, and so the return turned out to be like absolutely incredible. And the problem is that happiness lasts for like 30 seconds, because it's a paper share, it's a paper value. Like your portfolio, like your net worth increased like this, but you're looking at that and you're like, oh, but I can't do anything because I can't cash out, can't do anything. And so what happened after that is that like I started looking into that concept, because I wanted to have like a vehicle to cash out private shares of a company, because that was a problem that I had. I looked online, nobody was actually working into that. And I needed a solution. So nobody was doing that. And I was like, okay, I'm doing that on my own. And that's how I found my startup. And then that's how I remain in the space. But I would say
tell us a bit about your company. You and I made a number of videos in the past, and we're going to be telling everyone what we've actually done with hard forking in the very near future. In fact, in the next week. But tell us a bit about Corporatio and give us a bit more context. I mean, okay, you've given us a high level view there, but where did you see the hole in the market? And
so that was like back in the days when like people started talking about like ICOs and so on. So I never follow like the trend, that like in every single question you ask, I'm always like the black sheep in the groups or things like that, even in the market and etc. So my problem was very simple. I wanted to transfer shares of a private limited entity from an individual to another individual. And I thought the blockchain could have solved that. So what happened is that like super simplifying the process that took like a year, basically working with governments, I ended up developing an entire solution, an entire structure that basically take a private limited entity, puts that completely on the blockchain. You get a set of smart contracts that allows you to manage the corporate governance of the entity, and the shares are tokens, are basically represented by ERC20 tokens that are obviously modified for security law and so on, because they're shares, they're securities. And so if you are in the blockchain space, you can think about this as like a sort of like a legal DAO. We basically like legalized the concept of the DAO. We made that like so that you can have a legal entity that works in a very similar way as a DAO. Or if you're not in the blockchain space, think about that as a solution that you can automate your company, your private limited entity, so that you do not have to rely on incorporation agents, corporate secretaries, like people in general in the space that would charge you like hundreds of dollars for every single little things that they're doing, because the 99% of those operations are actually possible to be automated. And so that's what we've done.
So, hey, look, a couple of questions on this. Obviously, I've used your company to set up hard forking as a legal entity. We've tokenized that. Tell us for people that are completely new here. Let's start right at the top. Very quickly and very basically, what is a DAO?
A DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. So it's basically like groups of smart contracts that you will use to put people together. So a group of individuals will gather together to basically like make decisions as an organization. And these decisions are basically managed and coordinated by a smart contract. So instead of having like a notary, a lawyer, a figure, a person that makes sure that like, let's say that the three of us needs to decide something, in a traditional world, we will actually go to a corporate secretarial or a lawyer, have the documents in place, vote on something, sign that, and the lawyer would approve that. With a DAO, we will do the same exactly thing, but the smart contract will replace the figure of the lawyer. And so when we vote for something, the code take the ownership of the decision that we have made. And that's a DAO. Now, the big issue with the DAO is that it's a good or a fancy way to have like a group of people making decisions among themselves. And that's like a misunderstanding that there is like in many places in the space. A DAO is not a a legal entity. And so unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of people most of the time saying that, like, you know, because you have a DAO, then, you know, companies are going to like migrate on being online, like business is going to be done online, countries are going to be created online, and so on and so on. Let's be absolutely brutally honest on this. A DAO means that you as a user, as a member, you get 100% of the liabilities on you as a private individual. A private limited entity, a recognized private limited entity, removes liabilities from the individuals. That's why it's a private limited entity, because it's limit your liabilities. With a DAO, it's 100% on you. So if there is something that, you know, a mistake or something illegal that is done, or a debt and so on, that goes 100% on you as a persona. So just be careful on those things.
So really, in super basic terms, obviously we see so many of these crypto projects that have a governance token.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that's sort of, you know, effectively that is a DAO? If you're buying that token, that gives you a voting right in how that decentralized organization is going to operate.
Yeah, basically,
correct?
like when you have, yeah, it's true. Take for example, like
Yeah, we're doing.
One thing that, like I mentioned many times, Aavegotchi, for example, when you have the Aavegotchi, you can vote for that, for decisions that are happening. Like the latest thing, for example, has been the fact of increasing the fees in the marketplace. So they moved those fees from like 3% to 3.5%. That was a vote. The users of the network voted to increase that percentage. And that's a DAO, because you as a token holder make decisions on the future of the protocols, on the futures of the product, on the future of the specific blockchain project. Aave is another perfect example for that. When you're voting, for example, to add a new token, are you okay on having, I don't know, AXS as a collateral into Aave that you can like deposit and have in lend and borrowing? That's a vote that passed through the Aave DAO. And so if you own Aave token, obviously based on how many tokens you own, your vote has a weight that can be a lot or not so much, actually. But yeah, those are all examples of DAOs.
Okay, so I mean, obviously we're going completely off the cuff here today, people. But yeah, this is an interesting conversation to kick off on. I mean, for me, DAOs are going to need to fill a global good. That is kind of the beautiful story we're all hoping to get to here at the end with this type of structure. But we're also clearly going through a process now of the existing world, so to speak, with regards to regulation. How are these companies going to be taxed? How is this all going to look? I don't think there's too many better people on this planet actually than you to probably answer some of these questions and help explain this to people, especially people that are invested in various cryptos. So if we compare what we've done with hard forking, we've tokenized the equity in this business. So we're looking to create a blockchain-based media company here that we can bring as many of our community into the actual company. Could you just talk to us in terms of how, say, this particular structure, which is effectively a security token and equity, and how does that differ from a governance token that somebody buys on a decentralized exchange or even on Binance? What's real basic terms here for people? How are they different?
So they are different because, like in a security token, the definition is already defined. Like it's a security. The fact that you have the token part, the fact that it runs on the blockchain.
It's a share in a company.
A share in a company could be a security token, yes, but it's not only that. An option, a future, an ETF, a derivatives. A DEAR, a letter of credit, like all of these things are security in the traditional world. So the fact that you're bringing this into the blockchain, it does not change the nature of the original asset. So if I have a stock, for example, which is in the traditional world a security, and I move that into the blockchain, so I tokenize that, that is still a security. And why is this an important understanding? Because it follows the same exactly law as the security. The fact that it is on the blockchain does not mutate in any possible way the law that regulate that single asset. It's a security, it remains a security, follows securities laws. A governance token, that's when things gets a little bit more trickier. Why? Because a governance token is a utility token. It's a token that runs on the blockchain that allows you to make votes and to govern a specific project. Now, this is where things get very, very trickier, because the definition of security is different from country to country. And so in some countries, a security is defined with something that gives you legal rights. So voting rights could be one thing, for example, as well as economical rights. So the fact that you can get like a dividends, for example. And so in that specific case, I'm taking, for example, and I know that we spoke about like with Geo about that, but the AXS token sooner or later in some countries will be defined as a security, to be honest, because it really answered that. It's a personal opinion. Geo say that like Axie has obviously run things with the lawyers and so on. They say that it's not a security. To be honest, it does represent a lot of the things that a security and a stock would actually do, to be honest. It gives you voting rights, which is not implemented yet, but it will eventually. And it will give you dividends right, which again is not implemented that, but 5% of the fees of a marketplace, that's kind of like the definition of a dividend. Now, on the other side, and that follows also the type of like explanation that we're saying, is the fact that in Gio mentioned that when AXS has done like their sales in Binance, on Binance, they were US citizens were not allowed to buy into the AXS token. And that's very good. Why? Because the SEC is normally the one that defines if something is a security or not. So all of this, why? To basically make the point that like government's tokens are still in a very, very gray area where there is no clear definition yet if they're a security or not. And in the same exactly way as it happened with the ICO, governments are going to approach the law in a completely different way. So you're going to start having governments that are considering these as securities, DMG, for example. And so, governments are going to like do things against that and they're going to take actions. And then you might have governments that like don't really have an explanation on governance tokens, and that they tells you that like, we don't express our opinion. You're not allowed, but you're not forbidden needed to do that. So you can do whatever you want. And so I'm thinking, for example, a country like Panama. Panama doesn't have a regulation on blockchain. So if you're running a government's token, they just tell you that like, it's your own risk. You need to be careful, but we're not going to stop you to do that because, you're not allowed, but you're not forbidden either. It's okay. Singapore is going to have like that other approaches. China is going to have other models. The European Union will have other models. This is because like the concept of a governance token, or the concept of so many tokens that are being created in the same way of the ICOs, are new things. And so the laws needs to be adapted to allow this type of innovation to actually exist in the market. So is a governance token different from a security token? Yes, because as today is not considered a security. For some countries, the definition of security is different. So the same government token can be considered a security in one country and not a security in another one, based on what actually the government's token does.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many gray areas here. There are so many unknowns. So, if we take Bitcoin and Ethereum, we obviously understand, well, for a lot of people, they won't understand this, but these have been through the courts in the US and been declared commodities. They're taxed as such. So I'm just trying to help people that are invested in this market, because I think we all clearly know that in the coming months, well, maybe weeks and even days, we're going to see a lot of headwinds, a lot of FUD headlines around regulation. We've covered this extensively on the show, but for someone that's maybe holding Bitcoin, Ethereum, and say 10 other tokens, some of those are governance tokens. The person that's bought those, do you think they should be in any way concerned what might come with regards to something being declared as security? Obviously, we reviewed a project on this show. In fact, I think it was on our first episode of 1 Bitcoin and 32 Ethereum, a company called DMG. They were served a letter by the SEC in the US around securities laws, and they effectively just shut up shop. So, and it happened very quickly. Obviously, we lost our positions in those in a matter of days. What are your thoughts on how, somebody that is holding a number of governance tokens, should they be concerned? I mean, you're talking in terms of every country's got its own laws and jurisdictions, but this crypto marketplace is global. I don't want to sort of fudge my question here to you, but we're seeing Google come yesterday and say that they're going to be banning advertising of cryptocurrency exchanges and wallets come the 3rd of August. Now, even for this YouTube channel, I'm not entirely sure what that would mean for us. If we're talking about a crypto project, if we have a sponsor, etc., I'm not sure how that's going to impact us. There's so much uncertainty all of a sudden around the space, and that's because of its success. It's on everyone's radar now. But from your experience, talking to governments, doing what you do, I don't think there's too many people with a better understanding of the legal landscape. What would you say to just your typical investor who's holding a number of tokens at the moment?
Look, that's a tough one, because it really comes down to like where you live. One, the history of your government. The US is quite famous to go after situations like this. But if I'm thinking about like, I don't know, a random country that nobody ever heard of at all, like Vatican City, is the Vatican City ever going after people for like securities or things like that? Now I'm saying the Vatican City because it's probably like one of the countries with the least.
Don't bring the Pope into this, Stefano. He's already had a crack at Bitcoin mining.
I know, but like you see, like it's gonna be on government's tokens now. But I'm saying that because like I obviously don't know every single country. I'm just like trying to make an example and a point. The main thing is that like if you live in a country that traditionally like is very aggressive on these type of things, I'm thinking about like China has a lot of like headlines of things like that. If you're thinking about like the US as well, I would actually like, as an investor, trying to keep a very close eye on how the government react on things like that. Right now, you're fine. It's not a problem. But if one day they wakes up and they declare all of these like a security, means like that you need to do KYC, MAL, and so on. At that point, it starts being a question of like, do you want to do that? Do you want to take the risk of holding? Do you believe that the project will actually sorted out all of those issues? You might be fully decentralized already. You might be using Uniswap and so on. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're willing on taking the risk because you're like, how are they going to cut me if I'm actually holding these securities? Where are located those projects? Aave is in Portugal, for example. So, DMG was in the US. There is a big difference. If you're like in a government that traditionally will go after these type of things, and your team is in the US and your project is in the US, and the SEC is famous to do things like that, your risk is much higher. Have you ever heard the Portuguese government going after security tokens and so on? Personally, no. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they're like even worse than the SEC, but
in that scenario, that would be an EU directive. They could, for example, they could have a crack at Binance as a very united, powerful front. We've got those three main blocks. We've got the US, we've got China, and effectively the EU, which are the real major players here.
That's true, but like in general, like I would say that like there is a risk in everything, and you are willing of taking the risk no matter what. Would I actually be considered this like a super high risk thing right now? Not really, because they are a little bit different than a lot of stuff. Like it's not like the ICO bubble where retail investors are being like very scared and like it's kind of like the Wild Wild West and so on. This is a little bit different. Governments at the end of the day, here's the thing, because like a lot of people always like say the governments are the enemies or the bad actors and so on. It's not always true. Like regulators, to be honest, they're really trying to like do the good of the people in the majority of the times. It's just that unfortunately they are from a generation that it's not really tech savvy, I would say.
Well, actually, on that note, I mean, very, very fortunately for this space, we've got a guy called Gary Gensler. I've brought him up a million times. I watched 10 hours of his lectures on Bitcoin and blockchain. He was a lecturer at MIT, one of America's better institutes of higher learning. He's now the head of the SEC as of probably, I think, 6 or 7 weeks ago. So that's a pretty great guy to sorry, Stefano's having a heart attack here. You okay, buddy? I'll just screech.
It's a good thing he's muted.
Composure, mate. You okay there? You've gone red. Okay, we might have our first casualty on the Hard Forking channel live. Hang around for that, people.
Apologies, like the
Mato's having an aneurysm. Talking about securities law.
See, is the vaccine from Bill Gates that is like,
yeah,
you're not allowed to talk about this, and it's like killing me now.
Oh God! So look, I've lost my chain of thought there, but I'll sort of pick it up on. So obviously, what we've seen most recently is, institutional plays into this asset class. Now, obviously, we both know they go through a huge amount of compliance. They talk to regulators. They don't make moves on something unless they're pretty comfortable about future risk. So I'm sure they have assessed that. Big names in the space now, obviously Elon Musk, Michael Saylor in the Bitcoin camp. We've got Mr. Wonderful and Mark Cuban, very high profile figures, making content to hundreds of millions of people on the weekly. They're big fans of this space. So I just wonder, do you think there could be an issue between corporations and governments moving forward? Corporations have clearly signaled that they feel blockchain is the future. Crypto is the future. They're investing in it. For the masses, that's a massive signal that this is here to stay. I sort of feel at the moment that where everyone has sort of taken a bit of a step back to try and figure out what's coming next. But my question is really around. Do you think potentially governments could lose? What's the word I'm looking for? But for me, governments in so many scenarios have lost power here. I think the world is run by big corporations. They've signaled they're in the space. So do you see the maybe there is a battle on that front between these big corporations wanting to restructure how finance is working and governments? Is that where the battle lines are here, or is it more a case of you'll have an SEC chasing down people that have misbehaved in the ICO market and trying to hit everyone with a big stick there, or has this scenario become a bigger fish to fry in many respects, if you understand what I'm saying here?
I think that this is like pure speculation at this point, because like this is a level where it's like it's impossible to really have a proper answer. What I mean with that is that, so if you're looking at like the economical situation, the virus, the inflation rates, the minimum wage that are increasing, and so on and so on, like all the normal situation of like the world and everything as it is now, crypto is something new. And in the same way that we got like 40-50 years ago the internet, the computer, and like all of that, the dot-com bubble and so on, that was something that came along, and governments had to adapt to that because that brought in a new way of doing things. Some of them were good, and the government took them as a positive thing. I'm thinking about like electronic signature, for example, transferring using of emails for like document communications, and so on. And others, according to the governments, were not good. For example, piracy, streaming like of illegal peer-to-peer file sharing for like musics and movies and so on. So here is going to be the same thing. If the things becomes like big enough, they're not going to ignore that. It's in their own interest, obviously, like to adapt that into the world and so on. Same thing goes with the companies. So from that point, is that like going to be something that, is there like a master plan and things like that and so on? I really doubt something like that, to be honest. Maybe like there is, maybe I'm not aware of that. But to be honest, the way that I'm seeing that is really something that comes down to adoption. The more something is being adopted, the more people are seeing that there is a usage for that, both the companies and the individuals, the more there is an interest. If a lot of people are using that and companies start using that, companies are very famous, especially in the US, for lobbying. You can do lobbying. And so you can then like trying to get the governments also to like, being a little bit softer on specific things. But on the other side, it's not that the government is staying there and being like, oh, big corporation, I'm telling me what to do. Otherwise, I don't know about that. Like,
yep.
They are proactive on things as well. So they know as well that there are things that are very positive about blockchain. And on the other side, they also know that there are things that they are not very good about blockchain. The ICO wave in 2017, it's true. A lot of the things that we were seeing were absolutely dog shit scam. And to be honest, it's good that a government came in place and blocked that and put the regulation. Why? Because the random Joe that doesn't know nothing, but the random Joe is allowed with freedom to have access to all of these things, but is ignorant as whatever, needs to be protected. Because society works like that. Society needs to adopt to the slowest person of the train and in the chain, not to the fastest one, not to the smartest one. And people sometimes forget that. They're like, because they're going at this speed, they expect that the world should adapt to that. It doesn't work like that. Laws are creating to protect the little Joe that, poor him, doesn't understand anything about that and doesn't want to understand that. So that's kind of like, I see that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned digital signatures there. You mentioned file sharing. Two things that I've had a huge amount of involvement in. I set up a public key cryptography business back in the late 90s, so I saw how the interaction with governments and regulators around that space happened in those early days, and obviously that's become quite standard for us to use that now. The other one, file sharing. Obviously, the media companies were getting destroyed there. Music and movies were getting passed around. One of the guys that helped set up Hard Forking with me was very, very central in that space. But look where that went. Now we've got the Spotify's, Netflix, etc. So those business models have evolved quite quickly, and I think we'll see the same in blockchain. It's, to me, before we jumped on air tonight, we were talking about, oh God, where are we at? How are we feeling about all of this? Is the innovation moving quickly? I'd say I've sort of been a bit negative lately, just because it sort of felt like there's been quite a few attacks. But I think today's chat is more about maybe taking that step back and discussing where we think we are at. What we're liking, what's good, what's a concern. I don't think I don't actually have that many concerns. Yes, regulation is going to come in thick and fast here, but ultimately, I've seen two bits of media in the last 24 hours. One was Peter McCormack had a guy. So Peter McCormack has a show called What Bitcoin Did. In many ways, he's probably got the most well-known Bitcoin media brand. But he had a guy on called Eric Weinstein, who I rate incredibly highly. I follow that guy's podcasts, and this was just flat out painful for me to watch. It's this really defensive nature from a big Bitcoin media brand. It just came across as us against them, he kept on talking in terms of the host of the Bitcoin channel was like, we're doing this, we. And I'm like, you to me, you're just missing the point here completely. This is a decentralized technology. Money is the best application for it at this point, but the actual technology offers so much more. We've seen that with Ethereum adding in those smart contracts onto that technology. But on that note, we've also got Vitalik on the Lex Friedman show, one that goes out to millions of people. Just a fantastic podcast, one I watch on the daily. And the difference in the conversation between Vitalik and this host compared to the Bitcoin guy, the Bitcoin maximalist, and a real thought leader, a guy with a lot of clout, was just vast. So, on one hand, you guys know better than anybody. I was a Bitcoin maximalist before we started doing this show together. But what's happening on Ethereum is absolutely fascinated me. There's just a lot more to talk about, to be honest. But yeah, what I've seen in the last 24 hours from those media outlets concerned me. Bitcoin shouldn't be about this, us against them, these closed ranks. But still, this tribalism is still present in this space. It's almost an arrogance. As much as I don't really support how Elon Musk played his hand, going on the absolute flat-out attack against the guys as the Bitcoin community did is, and I saw it again yesterday with Eric Weinstein. I think these guys need to check themselves a wee bit here. Their message is not one of come and understand why Bitcoin's amazing. It's aggressive. It's really aggressive.
Where did all that come from, Sean? Yeah, where did all that come from? Where did all that come from?
The aggression.
Yeah.
Well, look, the thing that upset me was Eric Weinstein. Clearly, this guy is very. He's up in arms over what's going on from the central bank policy makers. He's basically saying that they are effectively, the way they're calculating inflation is completely wrong. So he showed up on this podcast to talk about, all right, what you guys say that Bitcoin solves everything. Don't trust, verify, all these wonderful statements we hear. But he was just pushing the guys to look, give me, arm me with what Bitcoin is going to do. Is Bitcoin revolutionary? Is it going to defeat, a broken system? Central bankers looking after the entitled, the 1%. The way they present a consumer price index and inflation to their populace, this guy is saying is just totally wrong. So how does Bitcoin come in and fix this? And, these guys, they just couldn't answer it. It was painful to watch. I mean, I'll put a link below. I don't want to shit all over Peter McCormick. I do watch his show. But, this was painful. As a Bitcoiner myself, it was just awful to watch. And then I watched Vitalik on Lex Friedman's show just before we jumped on air. I'll put a link below to that as well. This is quality conversation. So, there's a lot of confusion out there right now. So yeah, we're just throwing some ideas around today. What are your thoughts on tribalism, on how we're presenting ourselves to the wider market? How do you think we've educated people on the show, and who's doing a good job, who's not? What are your thoughts around that, Mr. Gonzo? What do you think the public's understanding of this whole space currently is?
Well, it's just going from scam to scam. I mean, originally Bitcoin is a scam. It's crashed. It's over. It did better. Then it comes back. The price goes way high and everybody thinks it's great. And then it crashes. And then it's a scam again. And now we started seeing it with other cryptocurrency assets, right? DeFi last year, right? And then just a couple months ago, we had NFTs, right? And people were all into NFTs. But now all the talk is, NFTs are done, it's crashing, it's done, it's useless, and it just seems like this cycle that just keeps happening. It's cool when it's pumping, but then as soon as the price crashes, it's a scam or it's useless, and it's just like ridiculous, right? And it just shows the attention span of people and the motivation. the motivation is greed mostly, right? People are looking to get rich quick, right? The people actually in it for the tech, like these hardcore Bitcoiners, they get this huge arrogance, right? Where they're like, "Ooh,
Well, I don't think Peter McCormick
we're the
really
best."
understands the tech better than a lot of other Bitcoiners. You know,
No,
it's become
well,
more
he's just a
a
parrot,
more
right? He's a
a
parrot.
philosophical, quite aggressive standpoint for a lot of those guys. Look, I mean, a lot of the maximalists are good buddies of mine. You know, that's the crowd I've sort of come up through the ranks with. It was only sort of doing the show with you two boys that I've really learned about Ethereum and everything else going on. Look, there's a show that I'll be posting after this one where I basically talk about price and I talk about value, and you know, it's interesting exactly what you've just said here. There's you know, people get disillusioned. They're the speculators and the gamblers that come in. So, you know, you've got investors. They're the ones that come in initially. They've understood some technology and they'll invest in a space. You know, there wasn't even a market for Bitcoin. I'm not sure about the early days of Ethereum. I guess you could obviously trade it immediately, but Bitcoin didn't have that. So you had people that were investing their time and energy and understanding it. We then had the traders come in. That then moves into speculators with leverage trading, etc. And then lastly, you have the gamblers. So I think you're talking about the gamblers at the moment. But you know, where would you know for you understanding value in both Bitcoin and Ethereum? How do you go about assessing that compared to the price? You know, what do you see as the value of these networks, and how have you seen it grow? Do you see it continuing to grow? What are your thoughts around the value of these networks as opposed to the price?
Yeah, I think the value is going to keep growing. I mean, it's the genie's out of the bottle, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like Stefano mentioned with Corporatio, you have a smart contract that replaces all these steps, you know, where you used to have to pay a lawyer and, you know, legal fees and all this other shit to get something done. That was only like, you know, 10 minutes worth of paperwork, right? Now you run it through a smart contract and it's like, you know, that's going to happen in almost every level of society and almost every industry, right? But it's not going to be tomorrow and it's not going to be next year, but it's going to be long term. I mean, like all the accounting, all the paperwork stuff, like data entry, all that stuff will be automated soon enough, you know, like the fourth industrial revolution. And cryptocurrency is a huge piece of that. So, I mean, it's just impatience by people, you know, greed, impatience, and then like the current kind of tone of society right now. You know, everybody's scared. There's lots of instability with the COVID banning, and nobody really knows what's happening. I feel like most people in the world, they can't make a real plan right now because there's so much just turmoil and things going up and down that I know it's just breeding impatience. And like people are like, oh, I got to get rich quick. You know, and they're just searching for that next thing. And then as soon as it takes a bad turn, they're like, okay, I'm done. Okay, I got to go back and find something else now. Right.
So you're definitely talking about the speculators and the gamblers. And I suppose, you know, maybe something that we've tried to do on the show is maybe turn some of those speculators and gamblers into more investors or even traders. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking, you know, sort of medium-term sort of positions in these assets, moving in and out of them a wee bit. But, you know, ultimately, I think the three of us are investors. So if you look at yourself, you know, you've been in the space for a decent period now. You've got on there, you've used a million things. You've demonstrated many of those on the show. So when we talk in terms of price and value, obviously the value is really derived from, you know, things like Metcalfe's law, you know, that network effect. You know, the more people using something, the greater the value of the network, and that certainly applies to Bitcoin and Ethereum. So what can you tell us about, you know, things that you've used in the last couple of years? You know, how is blockchain impacting your life now? I mean, the three of us are full-time in blockchain, but where do you see network effect? What are you actually using? What do you have confidence in?
Well, I mean, the NFT stuff is huge because, you know, like I'm an artist by trade, an animator. And, you know, that's the reason that I got in 2018 was to, you know, have control of the rights of the content that I created, right? But at that time, it was all pie in the sky, just an idea. And nobody was actually using it like that. It was all like ICOs and white papers and, you know, scam after scam after scam, right? And now, you know, we had that huge NFT hype run where it was for art. And then now we're starting to get the NFTs with utility, right? And, you know, you can see the network effect happening in Bitcoin, people transferring millions of dollars around the world, right? You see people using DeFi to realize gains that you aren't getting at the bank anymore. And then with gaming NFTs, you're seeing adoption and network effect happen like right before our eyes, up to the minute right now, I think, with what's happening with Axie and the play to earn space, right? They're kind of the first in the door. And play to earn, for me, has been like this. I think it's going to be a revolution, you know, allowing people that normally didn't have a chance to make a regular living wage. Now all they need is a mobile phone and an internet connection, and they can, you know, provide for their families and make a decent living just by playing video games, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But I mean, it's going to be revolutionary, and it's already happening. Like the exponential growth that's happening on Axie right now is like mind blowing. And at the same time, you're getting published stuff in the news where it's like, oh, the NFT market is crashing. It's like, well, the speculative NFT market is crashing. When people use the NFTs for something like to buy milk and cheese and diapers for their kids, that's not speculation. That's use case.
Yeah.
You know, and use case drives adoption. And, you know, mass adoption happens from a good use case. So, I mean, it's happening, you know, and like you can see the ups and downs of the cryptos and the Ethereum and Bitcoin, but the stuff that has the most value is going to retain value because of just the community of people using it for whatever that chosen use is, right? And you know, I love art. I'm an artist, but art value is all speculation, right? And that's exactly what's happening now. All this stuff, you know, all the crazy NFT hype that was just totally died, right? Everybody's, you know, illiquid assets.
Is there any, you know, is there any sort of sectors that you would say, do you feel things are overvalued right now? I mean, you could talk about Ethereum and Bitcoin specifically. Do you think those networks are overvalued, undervalued? And how would you come to a statement on the value of those networks? So obviously we've got a price, but that changes dramatically. I mean, at the moment we're seeing Bitcoin trading in this range between 31 and 41. A lot of people saying if it breaks 31, it's going to go down to 20 and then down to 10, et cetera, et cetera. That's price. But you know, what can the three of us maybe tell the audience about value? You know, what do we see? What are we using? You know, what are we confident in here, Stefano? Or sorry, Jordan, you go first.
Well, there's a question in the chat that was kind of, you know, it's like, oh, we're in a bear market, right? And Stefano said, oh, well, did you sell everything? You know, and I said, okay, we'll tether up, right? Like, okay, so you're going to exit the crypto markets. Then what are you going to go to? USD? Like, what USD is like, there's such an inflation crisis happening that if you want to hold USD, what are you going to do? Buy RMB? Like euro? Like gold? What are you going to buy? Right? What's the solution? For me, Bitcoin is like inflation insurance. And it's something that, like, you know, you can see why the Bitcoiners are so like about it. You know, they're just hardliners, right? Like, I don't agree with the tactic, but I agree with the principles behind it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Stefano, thoughts on this topic?
Well, so
what are you using? Where do you see real value? I mean, there's a lot of people watching this that are invested in multiple tokens. You know, they're looking at price. You know, when I talk in terms of investors, traders, speculators, and gamblers, you know, there's a lot of gamblers watching this. You know, what would you have to say to people that are consumed with price as opposed to value? Where are you seeing value? Talk us through this.
Well, it's either Ethereum or is nothing, isn't it? Jokes aside, no, I buy what Jordan is saying. It's very true. you get in a situation where like Bitcoin is becoming an edge against inflation. On the other side, we also need to like keep in mind one thing, that like let's use an example what happened in 2017 once we switched from bull to bear, that we went down on 90% from the bags and so on. So I agree on the fact that we might actually see inflation or even hyperinflation in the economy, in the dollar, and so we might actually be burdened of like 10, 20, even 30% in a year on purchasing power. But if on the other side the market crashed 90%, then it's a double bad scenario. Like, you know, we also need to like be careful on that. But if you're looking at the data and like the storyline and so on, it's true, it does make sense to hold an asset that like will perform well against an inflation side. However, I'm way less into the Bitcoin storyline, simply because like, you know, I don't go, I buy Bitcoin. Yeah, cool story. I buy gold. Cool story. I don't go around like with my friends when I'm drinking a beer and be like, you know, I bought 5 grams of gold because gold is it is an asset after inflation. And now like I'm going to buy another 5 grams of gold because like I'm going to do perpetual dollar cost average. Because like, you know, gold is like a stable thing. That's like the important thing. The market price, the inflation rate is going up 20, 30%. Did you see that inflation rate? No. When I'm with my friends drinking a beer, I'm like, hey, did you try the new game? Or, hey, how about like the deal farming thing that is giving like 400% in a year? Did you see that? Did you take advantage of that thing? You know, the conversation, I agree with that. I buy that. It makes a tons of sense. But it's not the type of conversation that I have with my friends, to be honest. Like, I'm pretty sure that there are people that would do that, but I don't meet someone and be like, yeah, did you see like this
I'm that
printing
nerd.
dollars?
I have that conversation with my friends. That's why I don't have many friends.
Yeah, that proves the point. Like, can you imagine that for a second? You're meeting your friends, you're like, so how's it going, man? And you're like, yeah, you know, like this printing of 60% of dollars from the Fed is like, man, I'm so worried about this thing. What is your point of view about that? And your friend is looking at you and it's like, okay, bye, see you next year or never. Like,
Man, the only
Welcome to my world.
the only thing anybody I know wants to talk about is fucking COVID. I'm so sick of it. And you know, and that's, you see what's happening. It's like a manipulation, right? Like everybody is scared fucking shitless of COVID. They're so sick
That
of
is
being
true.
locked up and they want it to go back to normal. And you know, so what's the solution? Oh, you just get your vaccine. That's the best way to go back to normal. There's something so fishy with what's happening right now. Like, I don't know. I'm just, yeah, like
Well, what
nobody wants to talk about anything except for fucking COVID. It's so
that
crazy.
is true. It's becoming
It's
like a
fucking,
little bit of
oh, I'm so tired of it.
of the
So
storyline.
tired.
Even same thing like yesterday, I was like meeting a couple of friends, and the good portion of the first half of the conversation was indeed about like the vaccine rates of in Singapore, how many people has been vaccinated, the lockdown, the problems, the going back to travel, blah blah, and so on, like all of that stuff. This morning I was talking with the clients. As soon as the bubble is being established between Singapore and Australia, we should meet up in person, face to face. Like it's true. The conversation is all around COVID and so on. But that's kind of like the point of like what I'm trying to say on this. It's really like, where do I see the value? It's really on Ethereum. And if I cannot place a bet on the winning horse, I'll buy the track. Like that's my philosophy on that. If I don't know if I'm in a horse race and I don't know which one will perform better, then I'm the company that builds the horse track, because I know that I win no matter what, because every single horse that comes in will pay me a tip. Ethereum to me is that. I don't know if actually will be the best performing play to earn games this year, next year, in 5 years, in 10 years, and so on. But I can buy a piece of the network. I don't know if Aave will be dethroned by another DeFi things. I don't know if Uniswap will be dethroned by another DEX. I have no idea about that. That's like capitalism. That's competition. That's like innovation. You do products that are doing the same thing, and there is the competition at the end of the day. But if both of them are running on Ethereum, if both of them are paying gas in ETH, at the end of the day, I'm betting on the track company. I'm betting on the ecosystem. And if you're looking at the numbers, now this is like one of the conversations that we had many, many times. I don't bet on Binance Smart Chain. I don't bet on Cardano. I bet on Ethereum because the numbers are on Ethereum. That's the thing. I hate having opinions. My own opinion. I hate my own opinion because like I set up for disappointment at that point. If I believe that my own opinion is right, because obviously it comes from me, and so I believe in myself, obviously, then I put myself in a position of believing that a project will do this or that. If I do that, I have expectation. If I set up expectation, I set myself up for disappointment. And I don't do any of those things. I just follow the numbers, the data. Who is developing right now is developing in Ethereum. The projects that are solid, that have usabilities, that have like users are on Ethereum, or things that are relating to actually the Ethereum ecosystem. Ronin is a side chain. It still consumes Ethereum gas price. Polygon is a layer 2. It still consumes and settle transaction on Ethereum on the main chain. All of those things, if they grow, yes, it's true. Polygon, if Matic ecosystem grows 10x, the Polygon price will grow way more than the Ethereum price. But at the end of the day, Ethereum would actually get a benefit from that, and so on and so on. So that's my only point of that. What I believe is going to happen, what I think is actually like potentially possible, and I say that many, many times. Play to earn is one example of that. DeFi is one example. Heart, in the sense of like NFTs and so on, it's one example of that. Those are use cases for specific people. How many use cases do you have in society? Everything that you can think about. And not all of them are in blockchain yet. What do you think is going to happen? Is that use case going to be developed for the first time ever on Cardano? Maybe. I don't know. But chances are that actually, because the majority of the developers are, and the quality of the developers are on Ethereum, that there is going to be something on Ethereum doing exactly the same thing, if not even before it's available on somewhere else. That's my only statement on that.
Okay. So I think the next year is going to be very much categorized by governments trying to wrap their head around the, especially tax implications of so many of these projects that are built on Ethereum or any of these other blockchains. Do you have any insight into how you talked before about obviously every country has different legislation, but what we're doing here is global. That's what excites me. If I look at who's in this chat here, we've got people from every corner of the globe. I know, from dealing with our communities and the play to earn space, it's been wonderful to get to know people all over the world. We simply don't have a global legislative process. These are all very, very different scenarios.
And
how do you think this is?
Have...
No. So
no, we're never.
What are your predictions for the next 12 months around how the space will be regulated? Do you think there are any scenarios? Obviously we've got privacy coins, which I think the people behind those, that's a big, well, we don't give a shit. This is a decentralized method of value transfer. I mean, how do you see this playing out?
Here's the thing. I know that many of the small countries are going to release new frameworks around regulations in the next, like, not even 12 months, but by the end of this year. So in the next 6 months, actually, this is going to happen. And I'm talking about, like, at least I'm aware of like a good 10 countries that are going to do this. Now, the reason why those countries are doing that is not because they wake up a morning and, and they decided that they wanted to do that. It's because they were asked to do that. I obviously need to be very careful what I'm saying in this type of things, but you know, regulations is coming from small countries. If I'm looking at the big countries on the other side, apart from like, you know, wild dog scenario and so on, and the FUD, which I don't really follow. You know, China banning Bitcoin next day. China does not ban Bitcoin next day.
Yes, today's headlines that China hasn't banned Bitcoin.
Well, wait, and by next Monday they will ban Bitcoin again. And it's that like this thing is happening like all the time at this point. But that's the FUD. I don't really care about those things. I don't follow that. But the big countries are actually looking at this in a way that they're trying to like figure out what they can do in a proper way with that. It's a very nice thing, to be honest. They're trying to be very proactive on things. There are a lot of like governments and countries in Europe as well that are really getting like round tables and trying to figure out what they can do to actually like regulate things in a good way. The problem is that, you know, when you're trying to do things like that, it's a nightmare because like when you're creating a law, you need to make sure that that law is not going like against anything that is already available. It doesn't create a domino effect that it can backfire. And at the same time, many of those countries have other broader type of laws in place. If I'm a European country and I create something and create a law for myself, it also needs to be okay with the other members of the European Union. Same thing it works like with one of the things that like, and that's hilarious because I saw so many people being like, the DAO LLC that Wyoming has introduced. And everybody's like, oh, this is incredible. This is a revolution. This is such an important step in the right direction. Is it really? Because Wyoming might be okay with that. But the US government never said anything about that. So if you're doing a DAO LLC, you still need to do KYC-MAL in order to, with the IRS, in order to like being fulfilled and compliance with everything. If you don't do that, you're not a member of an LLC. So your liability is still 100% in the same way that it was before. So what's the benefits of having a DAO LLC? None. But that shows exactly what is happening. You got the small players that is trying to innovate and the big player that is waiting. It's just looking and it's like taking its time to decide something. You know, big governments are actually dinosaurs in the sense of like the size that they have, but therefore also the speed, because it takes a lot of time for them to actually like build up something. So a lot of countries are looking at these type of things. The small ones will have things in place by the end of the year. The big ones will not. It's going to take them a little bit more time, but for sure regulations will come in place in the future. It has to happen.
Do you think we could potentially have a scenario where, you know, not just through the use of blockchain technology could play a major part here, but, you know, that whole concept of effectively online countries. You know, in fact, I believe you and I met at some drinks with the president of Liberland.
Yeah, that's true.
They were some guys who were, you know, starting their own country using blockchain. Do you think any of these sort of initiatives, how realistic is that? Are they good? Will it be completely stamped out by the existing power base and governments, or do you? I mean, obviously, you know, the promise of this unconfiscatable, uncensorable global value transfer that you know Bitcoin brings to us. You know, there's a chance there. My gut feeling tells me it's definitely just going down the route of you know, a very regulated treasury asset now, even though it cannot be stopped. You know, a government's ability to step in and go, well, look, you know, if you hold this or you're doing this with it, you know, the penalties are so extreme that just kind of dies off. But I think, do you think that we could in the future have these DAOs that effectively are these big communities that could go completely global, could effectively become almost country-like in their governance and how they operate with their own different tokens that allow, you know, transfer of value, commerce to exist? Do you think that sort of thing? Is it possible in the next 10, 20, 30 years? Is that a pipe dream? Is it a dream we should be having? What are your thoughts around that?
So it's true that we met with the Liberland opening office ceremony in Singapore and so on. But that topic that a lot of people are talking about that now, like cloud nation and this type of things, in reality is not a new concept at all. When I was in the Valley a couple of years ago as well, meeting up with other partners that we have, blockchain projects that we work with, and so on, and in general, like people that you respect, but they're on the other side of the world. Those were actually like the conversations that we were having. Now, obviously, I was joking about like I'm so worried about like the Fed printing 30%. My conversation when I was in the Valley was like, so the concept of obviously like a corporate becoming so big that potentially they can get a country, like what's your point of view on that? So those were the conversation that I was having.
I mean, I've been part of many of those conversations. I love those conversations. We haven't had one of those for a while, so let's revisit it.
That's true. But so this is not a new concept. At the end of the day, I hate to be that guy, but I find that quite silly to actually like really thinking in that way of something like that. It kind of reminds me, and really like I know that some people are gonna be upset on this, but I'm trying not to actually like piss off anybody. But the point is that like it reminds me so much on that conversation about like that we had with one person representing a project. That was me and you actually when we were doing an interview off camera, and one of my question was really like one of my points was like, okay, so how do you see this? Because like obviously what you're doing is a security, in my opinion. So how do you see this actually playing forwards and so on? And the answer that we received was like, oh, doesn't really matter. We're just like gonna grow to be big enough so that when they're gonna knock the door, we're gonna be big enough that we're gonna solve the problem. We're gonna pay to solve the problems. I hear a lot of people in the space having that mentality. They know that they're doing something that is illegal, but their point of view is like, I just need to grow enough that like I'm gonna be big enough.
Well, just to put some context around that, I mean that effectively is how Bitcoin sort of got to where it got, because there wasn't that central entity that were issuing the tokens. So it got to it got that network effect. Enough people were using it. Everyone, the governments realized, geez, we can't stop this. But in respect of other tokens, it's quite easy to identify, okay, well, these people have launched this token. No different to Bitcoin. You're putting a token out there. You hope it gets network effect and takes on value, and then it starts getting traded.
Yeah, but the thing is that like on something like that, the problem is that it's completely different. Everybody's missing one important point on the concept of like a national, a cloud country or something like that. Owning a passport or being like a citizen from a country doesn't come just like to the simple fact of like you decide your own rules. It's not about that alone. Taxes. Do you think that the government will willingness being telling you like, yeah, start your own country, don't worry, compete against me, don't worry about that, take away like incomes and all the set of things that like comes in place? And here's the point. Why am I having this point of view? Because not a lot of people knows this, by the way. The Republic of Italy, which I'm from Italy, the Republic of Italy has had declared war only once in his entire history. The Republic, not Italy as a country, Second World War, First World War, and so on. The Republic has declared war only once in its entire history. And that was done against the Rose Island, which was...
They were troublemakers, though. They deserved everything they got.
Really?
I have no idea about the story, actually.
So that's the thing. So what happened is that like at the end of the 60s, during the 1968, it's a very famous like movement in France, in Italy, and so on. That entire movement came in place to like regulate like minimum wage, and worker policies for employees and so on. What happened is that one guy got completely upset with the way that Italy was running things, with the decisions and so on, and he went on the coast, next to the coast on Rimini, so in Emilia Romagna, and basically build a metal and cement structure.
Oh,
the
there's a
middle of the
movie. There's a
ocean.
movie about this out at the moment.
There is a movie, exactly. There is also a movie about that. This is a real story, by the way. And so, he self-declared himself an independent country. Italy declared official war, went and bombed the thing down. Why? Because they were not okay with that, because that generate problems and stuff like that and so on. What that episode lead to is the fact that now the definition of national water was actually moved and extend. So national waters and international water, if before they were something like 10 miles away from the coast, they became 15 miles from the coast. Now, I'm not sure about the numbers, but that's basically what happened, because that single episode came in place. So why I don't believe in national cloud countries and all of that storyline, because my country has dealt with that in the past before majority of other countries has dealt with that. And Italy is not really famous to start a war, to be honest. We're not considered the people that you fear in a war or anything like that, Now, what does that mean? It means that people are going to start having the DAOs exactly in the same way. Why are DAOs not recognized companies? Because people are no, you have your own liabilities if you want to do that. If we regulate you, then it's a different story. You pay taxes in the country where you are. You pay taxes to me. That's the point of that. So if I'm doing a country, in the case of a me country and so on, I can go with a model similar to the e-residency in Estonia. So I could create this sort of community type of thing. Yes, I could do that. But if I have an e-residency, I still pay taxes in the country where I am from. I still follow the rules of the countries where I live, those type of things. That model, the utopistic model that people are defining in the sense of it's going to be a new country and you're just going to go online and be a citizens of the digital world and so on. Come on, guys, let's be realistic a little bit. That's not going to happen.
But let's also be realistic. And, if I, how passionate I've been about Bitcoin. Yes, it's a hell of a lot more interesting to make content on Ethereum because there's just so much more happening. But if we come back to, to that sort of base thing here, a lot of our community are in countries whose currencies are under, they're at breaking point. They're using huge amounts of value. They are in hyperinflation. So, having that option of having a way of retaining value, of exchanging value that is separate from the state, to me that I almost view Bitcoin as a bit of poetry. It's not what I see happening in Ethereum is, in many ways, as I say, much more interesting to talk about on the daily basis because there's just so many things happening there. If, I as a content creator, if I want to find a way to actually monetize what I'm doing, get real value from the efforts I've put in, Ethereum is going to bring that to me, not Bitcoin. But what Bitcoin is offering right now, we're talking about the anti-inflation hedge for institutions. But, if you look at a lot of our community, it doesn't really apply too much to us so much for Bitcoin. But there's a lot of people that having that option to have a form of store of value that ultimately will become a currency in Bitcoin, because you're not really trusting what your government is up to, that their monetary policies have failed. Maybe there's war in your country, or you've had natural disasters that have played havoc with the currency's value, etc. To me, this is amazing that people have that option now, and I think that's quite lost on people. The fact that it's been able to grow to where it's at now, where it's not a large piece on the chessboard. It's a pawn, but it's on the chessboard when it comes to a global finance scenario. I fully believe that we will see initially smaller nations have Bitcoin on their as a treasury asset alongside gold. When we go into this, these central bank digital currencies, the renegotiations of who owes who what, how this is all going to get resolved. It is a chess game that's going on here at that level, and Bitcoin is, as I say, it is a piece on that chessboard now. But what I find fascinating is to what degree these other tokens, these other communities, because ultimately you still need those payment rails to, for people to exit a position. Okay, you've got onto play to earn, you've built up a holding in a token. Ultimately, you're still probably converting that to an Ethereum or a Bitcoin to exit to fiat. But to what degree will those payment rails be attacked by regulators? That's where sort of my concern lays. To what degree certain projects will have that ability just to get that critical mass where that won't be. They don't view that. You mentioned that example before. They're like, well, we're just going to grow big enough where regulation won't matter. I mean, as you say, that's a pipe dream for most things.
Well, they're gonna get. So one thing on that is like what you're mentioning is very different from creating a new country. Like there are two very different things. I do believe that Bitcoin has an edge, yes, against so many things. Like yesterday night, I got this rumor. I don't even know if it's true or not. That Russia is planning of selling all the USD that they have to actually buy gold, Bitcoin, ETH, and those type of things. It's a rumor. I have no idea if it's true or not. But it's simple fact that
the Russians are buying a huge amount of gold. So are the Chinese.
So the fact that things like that are happening, it just proves the point. But there is no way these companies trying to become countries. Can you imagine that you go to the Chinese government, you're like, hey, that DeFi project that I just started, I'm gonna be my own nation, and all the Chinese people are now becoming my citizens, and goodbye. They're gonna take you and put you in jail in 2 seconds. Not only China is an example. The US government would do the same. Again, Italy has declared war in the 70s for something like that. Really, history has the answers in these type of things. Now, on the other side, the regulation that is happening is also very, very different. That's what it's coming to be. There is always gonna be, in the same way that companies are doing competition, capitalism is proving that one company can compete against another. Countries are competing against each other. So if I'm running a company that all of a sudden my payment gateway doesn't work anymore because I cannot transfer cryptos to fiat and so on, vice versa, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna establish a company in a different country that has a system that allows me to do exactly what I need. There is always going to be one country at least that will allow me to do that. So me as a company, as a business, I'm just going to move, because that's a thing. A physical person is way more complicated to move around than a company. They're two very different things. I can just establish.
So what you're saying there is almost like a small country in a very dramatic scenario.
Christ, you need to drop this thing of the country.
No. But what I'm saying there is you did right. It's an interesting point, because if a lot of people crack down on Bitcoin, it would be if you were whatever country could turn around and say, well, we're more than happy to cash your Bitcoin out in our currency, and that country would probably boom. You would have a huge amount of capital. We were over $1 trillion, and imagine all those wealthy people going, "Fuck it, I'm moving there." I don't discount those sort of scenarios coming up in the future. I certainly would be more than happy to go, all right, I'm moving to Portugal or wherever that is friendly to what we're trying to do here.
Is already happening. The competition for the migration. Back in the 70s and the 80s, it was very famous, that thing for the top 1% of the second passport. Okay, that was something that you had $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 to spend, bam, here's your second passport and so on. Then that thing evolved into like the so-called golden visa. So you're spending like $500,000 or €1,000,000 or $1,000,000 and this and that. You buy a real estate, you get a PR status, you got like a permanent pass, you got like a passport, whatever it is, and it evolved. Now, the competition is getting completely different because the government doesn't even have to issue that thing anymore. They're just telling you like, no tax on crypto. And people are like, oh, wait a second. I just made $1,000,000 because of like this bull run that just happened. My government would tax me at 30-40%. That's $300,000 or $400,000. But if I move to that country over there, they tax me zero. Oh, well, goodbye. See you soon. And so that is obviously going to happen. What happens on the other side? And I'm taking, for example, Bali as an example. Bali in Indonesia, cryptos are not regulated. You cannot use cryptocurrencies. But at the same time,
which is hilarious because there's a huge crypto community in Bali.
That's exactly my point. But Bali has an enormous cryptocurrency community. So what happened is that illegally, obviously, shops to cash out cryptos has been growing and being created. Are those things legal? No, they're not. If the police caught them, they're serious trouble. But at the same time, demand the supply. Why are illegal activities not coming down if there are laws against that? Singapore has the death penalty on drugs. Do you think that there are no drugs in Singapore? That's the point. Why is that? People are willing to risk their own life to import drugs there because there is demand. And if there is the demand, there is a risk and return, a risk and reward. If it's me and I'm like, oh, wait, I can sell this thing for $500. I'm like, would I risk my life for $500? No, obviously not. But if I come from a place where the minimum average salary for a month is maybe $20 or $30 a month, and I'm like, wait, if I smuggle this in, I make like 10 years on my salary, would I actually be willing of taking that risk? Some people are, yes, for them is a yes, because they're in a situation where like they're okay of taking that risk. So if you're gonna have like countries,
or they have no option, more to the point, in many scenarios.
That is also true. That is indeed also true. And so you're gonna get like countries that are gonna try to like flirt with the people to migrate to them and like being, okay, come to us, we're giving you all of these things. Singapore is super good in this. No capital gain taxes, no crypto taxes, no dividend taxation. Business that are like income that is generating outside Singapore doesn't have to be declared. That's kind of like a beautiful place. But obviously a lot of people wants to come to Singapore because of that, because taxation is super low. They're very, very good in this type of things. But on the other side, you know, not everybody is going to be in that opportunities. Not everybody is going to be capable of doing something like that. You know, not everybody has 500,000 euro to spend on a golden visa to move to Portugal to get a visa. It's simply not possible for everybody. So what is going to happen? It's going to happen that if like the community in the Philippines, for example, goes around XC and the government all of a sudden says, no more, blockchain is illegal. What do you think are those people going to do when you start having like 2, 3, 4, 500,000 players daily in a specific country? They're going to find other way around. You're not going to take that down. They're going to be willing to take the risk and still do that no matter what. Because that's what happened.
So for me, you know, I really see it moving forward in tandem with regulation. Yes, you know, I love the fact that if we look at the real use case for Bitcoin, you know, for me, you know, I have some very good firsthand knowledge of, say, Argentinian farmers, you know, the wealthy people in places like Argentina, Venezuela, etc. They've been quite big. The people with money have been quite big investors in Bitcoin because you can literally walk through an airport with your entire value stored in your head. You remember a password, you go to another country. You know, obviously you've had to exit out of selling your land in whatever country you sell your house. You just want to get out. You know, there's always been that use case. Obviously, we've been plagued with all the, you know, the stories of drug, blah 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 blah. You know, I don't want to go down that route at the moment, but you know, for me, I clearly understand that, you know, back against the wall, right? Shit, how do, you know, what do I do here? And Bitcoin has come into play for many people there. And you know, you could say a similar thing about maybe MakerDAO. I know for a fact that a huge amount of capital in South America has flowed into DAI. You know, the token produced on that platform. So, you know, we're seeing huge flights of fiat into the crypto space, specifically Bitcoin and DAI. You know, that amazes me. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how these other tokenized projects, because in many respects, let's be honest, you know, people are sort of creating their own money here. And I've actually been quite surprised at what a bit of a free reign we have had in the space for that to take place. And I applaud the regulators for letting that happen. But we're clearly in this phase now. We've got big enough that it's on the radar. Who would you say is the most friendly country to crypto at the moment? And to finish off today, how do you see you know, in summary, how do you see the big players, you know, the European Union, the US government stepping in, not for Bitcoin and Ethereum, but for everything else happening in the space? So firstly, where are the most crypto friendly or blockchain friendly countries that you're aware of?
It depends if you're considering like for individuals or for companies. So if you're considering companies, the answer is Panama. That's it. Panama is, as of today, the most friendly crypto country in the world. And tons of people are like, and we hear that on the daily, but what about BVI? But what about Estonia? I hear that Malta is very cool, but what about Wyoming? Look, the answer is Panama. If you don't like it, go ahead, do your own research, put hours and weeks or even months of time in understanding these things, and you're going to figure out why it's Panama, the answer. If you're looking at like private and so on a persona, I think that Singapore is awesome. Singapore is actually a very, very, very good country for individuals in crypto because it's totally free. You have like your crypto.com card. You can spend crypto easily. You have like cashing out is fairly quickly. It's like, it's not difficult at all. But you have also like other countries that are pretty good. Germany, for example, which is like super under the radar. A lot of people don't mention that many times. But in Germany, if you're holding cryptos for the long term, you don't get taxes. And Germany is a beautiful place. Portugal is another one. 0% taxation if you're like trading on cryptos. Malta is another very, very great country. Belarus is another one as well. Wyoming is super famous for that as well.
Belarus, aren't they the ones that will send up a jet fighter and pull you out of the sky if you've done something they don't like?
Yeah, but crypto is okay there. So
okay.
As long as you don't, you asked for crypto, you didn't ask like on standards on every other parameter. So yeah, no, you do got like a lot of places, to be honest, that are like very, very good for cryptos. I'm talking about like regulated crypto, because you know Bali as an enormous crypto community is considered super nice because the cost of living is very low. But on the other side, cryptos are illegal. Like I'm talking about like clean, regulated, good, no issues, no problems, no headaches. If I'm cashing out $1 billion Singaporean dollars today, the government in Singapore does not ask me a single question. Try to do that in the US. So that's why Singapore is Singapore. That's why Portugal is Portugal. That's why Germany is Germany for the long term. Yes, they would ask you questions at that point. Germany would be like, when did you buy that Bitcoin? Like, oh, I bought 5 years ago. Okay, cool. No tax asked. That's it, done.
Yeah, somebody's just put a comment here, in Germany, crypto is tax-free if you hold them for a year.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just said. So there are a lot of countries that have like models that allowed you to have things like that.
Okay. All right. Has Mr. Gonzo disappeared on us? He
yes,
decided to go.
He had a family emergency thing.
Okay. Well, look, we're going to wrap it up very shortly, people. I know many of the Axie community is in here today, and we generally give away some scholarships on the show. But look, I'm personally getting some wallets together at the moment. We've got plenty more coming for you on that front, so don't fret. We will be back here next Friday. And in fact, if you jump into the Discord and hit me up, I've got a few scholarships. I've actually got some people in Jamaica and the Philippines. In Indonesia. I'm talking to at the moment on that front. We're very proud of what we're doing in that space, helping you out here. And I hope some of this conversation today, we're looking bigger picture about what is going on here. For us being involved in Axie and seeing this ecosystem, how the model is clearly working. We want to be doing a number of initiatives on this front. We're very, very excited about blockchain technology, what is going down here. But on these Fridays, people, we do want you to roll up and start asking us, a few more questions about the space in general. We're trying to take your knowledge of this to the next level. If you've been involved in the Axie community, we want you to understand, what else you can be doing in the space now, helping you on that front, putting you ahead of the curve here, giving you the opportunity to, create more value for yourselves. So please, ask us good questions. We are here to help. That's the whole point of this channel. Stefano, I'll let you close the show out today. Any parting thoughts or comments?
Not really. Market is good. I know that's a crazy thing to say, but here's the thing. I hear a lot of people being like, yesterday I heard this is like, it's a bull trap. We're in a bull trap. I'm like, how are we in a bull trap now? Like, what are you talking about? So either way, stop trading as per usual. That's what I say all the time.
Stop gambling. Stop gambling.
There is tons of money that is being made in the space at this point. There are free money that is being given on Polygon, on DeFi for liquidity farmers. There are Axie volumes are crazy. Like selling Axie is super profitable right now. A lot of games are actually like launching things and doing things around, and so like the pre-sales on a lot of projects are still like very, very good. Like there is simply so much. So this is, as of today, a moment where like if you are active, and this is something that we've been saying for ages at this point, but if you're active, there is so much in opportunities and in return to be made that it's insane. If you're a trader, then look at your chart and have fun. What do you want me to say? But no, it's a good time actually.
Yeah, true. I mean, don't get caught up in the these price moves, people. We tried to sort of demonstrate the difference between price and value. There's it can absolutely tear your emotions to shreds if you are attempting to pick these highs and lows at the moment. There's big players involved in the market now. It is quite difficult to do. So find value for your investing is my thesis here. Stefano, do you just want to quickly mention Nine Chronicles and what we're doing there before we wrap up today? Another great play to earn opportunity.
Yeah, so one of the things that like we mentioned a few times is that we have a 50,000 tokens basket available on Nine Chronicles Gold token. And we are developing that play to earn mechanisms where like if you're part of the R14 community and if you're playing the game, you will receive tokens. So that's an extra layer on top of like, scholarship on Axie, other play to earn mechanics that like members in the community are doing. If you have a PC, you can download the game. You can start playing that again and join the server on Discord, where you got like all the different quests and tasks that needs to be completed. And then from time to time, we will add more so that we're going to make sure that this is becoming like a weekly things where everybody that is playing, or the best ones at one point, will be able to like get some nice returns on top of everything else.
Yep. I'm certainly mining Nine Chronicles. Someone's actually just put a comment in there on that. Gabrielle, with regards to Axie Infinity, do you think blockchain-based games will change how we mine NFTs? Well, look, as Stefano has just said, you can jump in there right now and mine the Nine Chronicles gold token simply by playing the game at the moment, something I'm doing. And on that note, if there's anyone that actually wants to sell me any, I'm going to jump into their Discord in a moment and let that community know that I do want to buy some. But if there's anyone watching here, please hit me up in our Discord. I will buy your NCG off you for sure. Okay, thank you very much, Stefano.
No worries.
I think we it might have been some new concepts there for some of the audience, but look, you know, anyone that is catching this after the live stream, basically on Fridays, where it's just a very casual hangout. We don't have a list of topics or anything like that. We're really just here to take your questions, chat away to you, very relaxed. So look, I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you back here very shortly. Thank you, Stefano. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
To the audience. Give us a like, a comment, and a share. Let other people know we're here.